This is the Cereal at Midnight podcast. Hey guys, welcome back to the Cereal at Midnight podcast. My name is Heath Holland, and this episode marks the return of J.R. Bookwalter to Cereal at Midnight. We know him as the filmmaker behind The Dead Next Door, Robot Ninja, Ozone, and so much more. He is back in the director's chair for the first time in over 2 decades with a new movie. Side effects may vary. It's a very fun, very gory horror movie that you can catch in your town. They are touring. J.R. Bookwalter and his lead, his screenwriter, producer, James L. Edwards, are touring the country with Side Effects May Vary. They may very well be coming to a theater near you. We're going to talk about all of that. What's it like to direct now versus directing in the late 80s, the early 90s, the early aughts? What's changed? What's different? We're going to find out how Sam Raimi helped bring The Dead Next Door to undead life. We're going to talk about Robot Ninja. There's really a lot of great stuff here, and we love independent cinema, lower budget cinema. We love supporting things that aren't corporate here at Cereal at Midnight. This fits the bill. This is a director, a filmmaker creating something basically completely independently with very limited financing and making something that he is now touring the country with. This is I believe in this, is what I'm trying to say. So I hope that you will enjoy this conversation as much as I did. Without further ado, Mr. J.R. Bookwalter. And so that's why what I love what you're doing. You've got a movie. You've made a movie again. We're going to talk about it, but you're going to tour it. You're going to tour it theatrically, which is incredible to me.
Well, not even that, but I'm actually denying anybody the opportunity to buy it physically or to stream it.
Like deliberately saying you can't have this.
Sort of deliberately, yeah.
Well, so why? Okay, why? Why would you? Given where you're coming from, given your history with home media, why?
Well, I mean, it goes back because I've made a movie in 23 years, a feature. I mean, I've produced some stuff, paid to have other people make stuff, things like that. But the problem, 23 years ago, we had Blockbuster, we had Hollywood Video, we had Tower Records, we had Family Video, we had still mom and pop shops around. You had Best Buy. I mean, all those places at one time or another carried some of my movies. They didn't carry all of them, but they carried a lot of them. And then you had, direct sales and stuff like that too. Now, almost everybody that I just named, including Best Buy, is out of the physical media business. So when I was after I shot the movie last year, it was kind of like, well, what the hell am I going to do with this thing now? Because I don't know how to sell a new movie. I mean, I've dabbled in it a little bit through Makeflix and Teppy Digital. I've put out some stuff that had never been available before or was of newer vintage. And usually the sales are not fabulous. I mean, they might do okay, but you don't see any significant numbers in it. Even no matter how hard you market it or whatever you do, everybody wants to watch stuff on streaming. Everybody wants to get their phone and watch Tubi or whatever else. And if you don't...
Can I ask you about that really quick? Because I think a lot of physical media fans, which is a lot of who watches my channel, are always surprised that there are a lot of people that watch. I don't know if they realize how many people are watching streaming. Most people are watching streaming, correct?
No, I mean, that's where anybody discovers a new movie now. If it's not playing in the theaters, you're seeing it on Tubi or some other streaming service. I mean, that's it. That's the way new movies get discovered. And I was sort of like being an old school guy. I mean, I should put this disclaimer out first. I love streaming. I have a huge digital collection that I've been cultivating over a number of years, and I watch stuff on streaming. So I'm not a snob. It's not about that. It's just I remember the experience of watching things a different way. And I still like going to the theater. I mean, there'll be times where I don't go to the theater and things like that. And I love collecting physical media too, but at some point, like what's behind you there, you run out of shelf space. You have to start being selective. So I don't know.
People don't see, so this looks so nice behind me, right? But around me, it's stacked up like this high. I'm in a rectangle that this is the only area of this room I can walk into. I'm out of room. It's terrible.
Well, that's what happens. And then it's like, what are you going to do? You don't want, then you start going through and going, well, I don't need this. I don't need this. I mean, you don't do that either. So anyways, it just came about like how to market a new movie. And I thought, well, geez, why don't we just go back and see if we can play it in a dozen theaters or something, and just for fun, and see if, you know, that way if people come and see it, then you got kind of got your audience already for when you release it on physical media. So that was kind of the impetus of how it even came to pass.
The movie side effects may vary. It clearly have. I got to see it. Thank you for letting me see the film.
Oh,
It seems very rooted in the pandemic and what came out of the pandemic. How did you? I guess my first question is why now? Why after 23 years were you like it is time to get back in the filmmaking saddle and do this thing again? Because
yeah,
I asked you about it a couple of years ago and you were like, I have
yeah.
no plans right now.
No, that's it. I mean, I've been telling people for 2 decades that, nah, I don't think I'm going to do it again. That's it.
Yeah.
Never was I'm not doing it again, or just, whatever. Um, Part of it was like I have these colleagues, James Edwards, who's started a number of my films and is now an accomplished filmmaker on his own. I mean, we would get together for lunch frequently, and every time I think he would ask me, "You don't feel like doing it again? You're not like interested in getting back out there and doing it again?" I'm like, "Nah, nah, nah." And I don't know what it was. I mean, I always in the back of my mind I was thinking, well, yeah, if this was, because the thing with me is I'm not one of these people that's going to go raise $500,000 from somebody and go out and irresponsibly make a movie that I know these people are never going to get their money back, or I'm not going to spend my own significant chunk of money if I had it to do the same thing. So what you would call the responsible indie filmmaker because I'm trying to, you have to do it at a budget where you can reasonably get your money back. And even, I mean, honestly, even these guys making $5,000, $10,000 movies are not getting their money back these days because it's just the industry is not set up for it. So that's sort of the long story. I guess I just sort of came to the conclusion that, well, maybe I should, I sort of sensed a trend with Make Flicks and some of the releases I was doing that I'm like, maybe I don't want to keep just selling the old stuff. And then there was also the issue of like, okay, when I run out of all my catalog stuff, what am I going to do then? I mean, granted, you can always pick up more stuff, but my films personally. So that was the other thing. I was like, well, at some point I'm probably going to have to make something. So why not, make it now? And the idea was just to make it to sell on Makeflix. It was started as a really much smaller project than we originally intended to do, and it just sort of blossomed a little bit into something a little bit bigger, not huge, but
I want to know how things changed between 23 years ago and now. Obviously, you've still been connected with filmmakers. You've still been, you know, involved in the creation of films, but you hadn't been behind the director's chair. Is it different? Is it different doing it now than it was? I know technology's got to be a little different, right?
well, the directing part of it hasn't changed. What changed, because I actually, in addition to directing and editing and doing all the post sound in this movie, I got those wild hair up my butt that I thought, well, you know what, I'm going to shoot it and light it as well. Like, kind of, this is basically a sort of a return to the Ozone days where I kind of
But
did,
I thought Lance Randus was the director of
well,
photography for.
of course, he is. It's a big return for him too.
Yeah, yeah, I missed that guy.
But that's where the majority of the changes were, is just the technology. I was used to, back in the days, we used to have these big lights, like these 2K lights and all this ridiculous stuff. I mean, we had lights that were so old. When I shot The Dead Next Door, we had some lights that we had inherited from the Renaissance Pictures boys in Detroit, that had been used on Evil Dead and other stuff.
Wow.
When you would plug them in, you would get like, like you'd get a jolt because the stuff was just so old and had been
Wow.
beaten it down. But so, and then those lights are really bright and really hot. All those old quartz lights that we used to use. And now they have all these LED lights. They get hardly, I mean, you can touch them and they're a little bit warm, but that's it. And they're so much more efficient and they can do multiple colors. You don't even need to get out gels and all this stuff. So, I mean, in that regard, the technology has changed dramatically as far as what you can do with lighting, how you do it, just the size of the cameras and all that stuff. I mean, obviously I am well known for shooting a lot of shot on video movies. So I've always kind of pushed the envelope in that regard. But the thing is, when I set out to do shot on video in 1991 with Kingdom of the Vampire, the technology was not where I would have liked it to be. So I always got kicked around because it's like, oh, you shot this on Super VHS or whatever. You're making these little things with whatever you got. Well, now the technology is caught up where you can actually make a movie that looks pretty spectacular on
Hmm.
very limited resources. So it's kind of interesting that in that regards, it took 30 years or whatever to finally catch up. It kind of
Yeah.
caught up with what I was trying to do all along.
You're a visionary. That's what you're saying. You saw you saw where technology was. You're the George Lucas of your era. That's kind of
Yeah,
what I think.
quarter movies. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I'll take.
You shot on film, right? You got to shoot a few things on film, right?
Yeah, my first three movies were Super 8 and 16, and then I did full moon movie in 2000 called Witch House 2: Blood Coven, which was shot in Romania on 35 millimeter.
How did you like shooting on film? Because I know it's a very different, more temperamental thing. Was it do you like the way did you like shooting on film?
Well, it's very stressful because,
Yeah.
especially in the case of Witch House 2, we only had so much film. And it was kind of like, okay, you shoot a take, and then it's like, do I shoot another take, or
Mhm.
am I going to run out of film at the end of this? You're only shooting a handful of days on top of that. The way I got around it with that movie was because of the Blair Witch hysteria at the time, I had built into the script some scenes that were actually shot on a camcorder. So it was kind of cheating a little bit because then I was able to get more coverage and more takes and make up for it with the scenes that were shot on a camcorder. So, but it's stressful. I mean, it's always stressful. Whether I was shooting my first film, The Dead Next Door, on Super 8, or Robot Ninja and Skinned Alive on 16 millimeter, the film is money. It's cost money to buy it. It costs money to expose it, and it costs money to develop it. To process it. So it's just cost. Where digital and in even to some regards, the old tape days, tape is expensive too, but
Yeah.
not as much as film. But digital, you could just, as long as you have SD cards or whatever, you could just keep going.
I've heard horror stories about people that shot something on film. Like you shoot a whole day and then it goes to the lab to get processed. And when you see it, you're like, oh, this is wrong. It's like exposure. It's improperly developed or something like that. And you've lost, you know, who knows how many minutes of a film that you have to go do again if you can do it again. In some cases, you'd have to tinker around with the film and get it back to where you kind of wanted it to go. It just sounds like a nightmare, honestly. Working, I mean, it looks great, but as far as
Wasn't it? I think De Palma's Blowout was the one where they had lost like a whole day or 2 days worth of. They had an insurance claim, and they had to go back and reshoot all.
yeah,
And it's like that big scene in the parade in Philadelphia and all that towards the end of the movie. I
yeah,
mean, can you imagine? I would just be like, ah, you got to be kidding me.
right, yeah.
Like, that to me, that would be the worst thing that could happen. But no, it's stressful, but it's at the same time, the thing about film that I learned early on, and specifically with Robot Ninja, was there's so much latitude to film that the way you envision it, somebody else at a lab could see it completely differently, and that's exactly what happened with the original VHS release. They color timed it completely wrong and completely the opposite of what I had set out, to do. And thankfully, I had the chance all these years later to go back and restore it. But you don't, that's not always a chance that you get. Those film elements could
Right.
have lost the time or whatever. So the film is fragile in some regards, and it's not maybe the filmmaker's best friend all the time, because if it's taken out of your hands, it could, you know, turn into whatever, something you don't want.
You were talking about the pressure of making a movie, especially on film, but I want to talk to you about Sam Raimi and that whole thing because there are going to be people who watch this that have no idea that Sam Raimi was involved in the development of one of your films. Can we go back and we're going to talk about the new, but I want to talk about the beginnings too because we've seen your early short films that you have this wonderful release where you chronicle all your 8 millimeter stuff and then leading up to really the director that we know now. Then the professional career takes over. Could you just kind of tell me how Sam Raimi was involved in that and what, like, I want to know if that came with a lot of pressure, is what I want to know.
Actually, because I was young, I would say the short answer to that is no. I didn't feel
Wow.
any pressure in that regards. Here's the reason why: because I like to say I tripped into that situation, because I went to Detroit looking to be just a production assistant on Evil Dead 2, which wasn't quite ready to shoot. It was an early prep at that point. And showed them some of my short films and just got to talking with them. And that just sort of led to Sam sitting me down and asking me the question, well, why don't you go make your own movie? Because, and the thing I found out later, well, I guess I knew it at the time, but I didn't realize it till later. Sam loves shooting on Super 8, and he had made his own Super 8 movies. So when he watched my stuff, he it was like a kindred spirit thing. Like he'd always wanted, I found out later he'd always wanted to make a feature on Super 8, and he came close a couple times. There was one called It's Murder, which was longer, but I think it was like maybe 40 minutes or 45 minutes or something like that. So he'd never actually taken the plunge. So when I came walking in, I think he saw this opportunity, like, oh, I could get this guy to do a feature on Super 8 and I could puppeteer it from behind the scenes. Even though we weren't initially shooting on Super 8, when I approached him, it was literally going to be shot for a few $1,000s on VHS video because that's all I had access to.
Hmm.
And then it sort of just ballooned from there. But no, I went in with one intention. I didn't go in there and pitch him. That was the thing. I never, I wasn't pitching my filmmaking abilities. I was just like, look, I could be of some value on your set. If I could bring people coffee, I could do, and
Yeah.
to his credit, he saw something other than that, in my spirit or in my personality, that he was the one that sort of said, no, you should, because I told him I was my didn't really have a plan because I dropped out of the Art Institute of Pittsburgh and I was just being a bum. And he's like, well, what do you want to do? And I said, well, I was thinking about doing commercials or something like the way George Romero and those guys in Pittsburgh had done it. And he's like, well, I think you should make your own feature. And if you come up, put something together, let me know. I might kick some money into it. And I'm like, okay. So I had a 4-hour drive back from Detroit to Akron, Ohio, with that ringing in my head. And that was where I basically like pictured the whole idea for Dead Next Door and exactly what I was going to pitch to him. And, a couple weeks later, had a script, had a little 5-page investment proposal, and he, true to his word, he did what he said.
It's incredible. That's an incredible story.
It's a once in a lifetime thing. That's just sheer, I mean,
Yeah.
I chalk it up to sheer luck, honestly. It was
Well,
just
it is luck, but what he sees in you, I see in you too. You are a born filmmaker, and you see it. We've talked a little bit about.
there's a lot of people who would disagree with that, but thank you.
Okay, I'm watching this new movie, right? And within the first 30 seconds, I go, okay, this has something other movies like this don't have. Your attention to detail, your eye, the way you use color, the gels, the angles that you use, you have a very ambitious, very cinematic sensibility, and you always have. This is the thing, is like I see it in the stuff you were doing when you were a kid too. And that's what I really connect with it. I understand that I like I'm gonna tell people I'm gonna pull the curtain back a little bit and say that we were emailing and I said, like, your Spielbergian childhood made me really jealous, and you're like, well, I don't know how Spielbergian it was, but you had a love of movies that was like oozing out of your pores, and you see it. Like, anybody can see it. They can see your passion for this. Everybody doesn't have that passion. Some people just they're like, we'll go walk around the woods and we'll make something. We'll just do something. You have a very cinematic passion, and it comes through in all you do. And I bet he saw that when you walked in and started talking. I bet he could see, like, this kid's hungry, because you were, and you still are all these years later.
For sure was. I mean, there's no, and thank you, by the way. But I mean, I hear that a lot, that people see that, whatever, that quality in me. So I can't, I won't sit here and try and dispute it. But I mean, I was raised at a really good time. I was 11 years old. Star Wars first came out. That was very influential. Prior to that, we had late night horror hosts in Cleveland, Ohio, that I watched all these great movies growing up. I had Dark Shadows and Syndication. I mean, all this, I was just like, my eyeballs were just like, give me all of it. I want to watch everything,
Yeah.
and all the magazines, Famous Monsters and Fangoria. I mean, it was just a very good time to grow up and have those interests in that stuff. So I'm sure a lot of it was just that influence of all these
Right.
things that I just kind of latched onto, and I watched movies in a I'm one of those people, I don't like people talking through movies. Sometimes, like my family had to learn that early on, like with my kids. It's like, no, we don't talk during the movie. We have to watch them, be
Right.
respectful.
Yeah.
But I study the movie. That's the thing. It's like, what makes this work? Why is this shot? Why does this shot make me feel this certain way, or why does this scene make me feel this certain way? So that, I think that's where it comes from. It's just absorbing all that stuff.
Yeah. Some people watch Star Wars and they just enjoy it. You see Star Wars and you want to go make your own Star Wars.
Oh, that's it. I mean, I was
Yeah.
like, dude, I mean, thankfully, we, my friend David Barton and I, who I grew up with as a Star Wars fan, our answer to that was to get our Star Wars figures out and start animating them on Super,
Hmm.
stop mo. We learned how to do stop motion animation and all that, and they were horrible, but that wasn't the point. That was the humble beginnings, and then you eventually you start, I probably did more tributes to things that I grew up loving. But I know I see that in a lot of filmmakers too. Everybody takes, they take what they enjoyed as a kid, and they try to put those influences in their later work, and that's just the way it is. Everybody's influence. There's nothing original, so you kind of have to make it original by pulling from this,
Yes.
pulling from that, that kind of stuff.
Well, and you learn by doing it too, and that's one of the things that I enjoy about watching your movies as well, is I can see the progression. I can see how everything builds on what you've learned. And
There's been a few
oh,
detours in there though along the way.
yeah,
I got
yeah.
sidetracked. I'm the first person. I'm my own worst critic, so I'm, if
We'll
I,
talk about that. Let's talk a little about a little bit about the detours. Like, what do you mean? Because people might be like, "What's he talking about?"
well, I mean, the SOV six pack was probably the most legendary detour. Just because I had shot Dead Next Door on Super 8, I had shot a couple 16 movies, and then I got this crazy idea I can make movies on Super VHS, and it really was just because I felt like I had to, because I just wasn't getting anywhere else. This is the bad thing about sort of lucking into the business is, for a while that kind of carries you. And then if you don't have any real financial success or meet the right people, then it's sort of like, okay, well, how can I keep doing this? You got to feed the addiction at that point. It's like, I want to make another movie. Let's figure out how to do this. So out of necessity came, oh, I found this Super VHS C camera that I can, that I thought
Mhm.
looked cinematic enough that I could work with it, and with the lighting and stuff like that, we could make it work. And that was a detour, and then that was a detour inside of a detour, because we started off on the right foot with Kingdom of the Vampire, and to a lesser degree Zombie Cop, but then we got into the Chick Boxer and Maximum Impact, and Galaxy of the Dinosaurs, and it kind of bottomed out at the end there with Humanoids from Atlantis. So that was a major detour, and then I kind of had to reassess that situation, and go back and figure out what did I do wrong, and rebuild with something like Ozone, which was sort of like, okay, now I'm gonna try and get back to where I was in the first place.
Mhm.
To a large degree, that's what the new movie is about too, is because I haven't made anything in so long, and the stuff that I made prior to that was, there was a lot of stuff more that I produced than I directed. But the last movie that I made was this giant scorpion movie for Full Moon, which is what it is. I was never, it was kind of a job, and I kind of wound up walking away from it regretfully, after it was shot, and didn't really have much to do with it. But I did not feel it was my best work, and it wasn't really what I wanted to do. And it wasn't the kind of movie that I necessarily wanted to make. So to me, the new movie, Side Effects May Vary, is kind of the same thing, where it's like a reboot. Like I'm rebooting myself and trying to, pick up where I think I left off, where I should have, and get back to where I want to be, I guess.
Where do you want to be?
Well, I mean, these days I would love to. Television is the place to be, honestly. It's a directors and actors medium, even probably more so than features. I mean, I don't have any huge. I never really had any. I think when I was a kid, probably I would have like, oh man, I would love to do what Spielberg does, or Lucas, or one of those guys. But um, I really, I mean, I'm less interested in the special effects part of it, and more interested in working with the actors. I mean, that's the thing. And
Mhm.
TV, that would be a great medium to do that. I'm not saying that I'm cut out for it, or that I will do it, or that it's a goal necessarily, but some kind of television, whether it's something I conceive, or just something that I go and, guest direct or whatever.
Could you work in that system being as independently minded as you are? Do you think you could? I think you could, but
Not
I,
forever, because I would at some point then want to be back
yeah.
in control. That's the thing. It's like I'll do it for, even when I worked for Full Moon, we were cranking stuff out there, and I was, but at some point, yeah, I get to that itch to like go back and be more in control of it. So it's not, that's what I mean. It's not a long-term thing. I don't think I could do it forever. Some guys do. I mean, there's TV directors who've been doing it for as long as, they've been alive. I
Yeah,
don't,
but
there's nothing I can do.
that's not you. What I know about you is that you are very singularly and creatively driven, and I mean, it's caused from you're very clear in the special features on a lot of your releases, the physical media special features. It seems like you don't always get along with people. You have a vision, you want your vision, and some people are like, "Well, that guy was really rough to work for." But that's that's what makes that I'm trying to avoid using auteur, but that's the kind of thing, right? Because like I know what I want, and I'm not going to stop until I get it. That's not a part of the machine. Like I have a hard time seeing you as part of a larger team because you are a creator, and creators have to create.
Well, I mean, I've worked plenty. I mean, filmmaking is it just in general is you're working with a team
It's
because
a
you can't
collaborative effort, right?
unless you are directing nature videos that you're going to be working with other people, and
Yeah,
that's what a lot of people I think don't because I would not necessarily consider myself a people person or a social butterfly or any of that stuff, but you've learned over the years how to work with people, and I mean honestly, I'll be most of directing is really just being a therapist to some degree or a psychologist. It's just figuring out, okay, this is what I want from these people. How can I get it from them without, smacking them on the head with a hammer and say, do it my way. You have to figure out more gracefully, figure out how to get what you want from people, and as well as deal with any baggage that they're bringing to the set. People show up like they had a bad night the night before, their makeup
yeah,
wasn't right in the morning or whatever it is. It's like you're dealing with personalities. That's what it is.
yeah.
So, I mean, there's no way around that. So you just have to just figure out how to, forge the path. And that's on top of everything else. It's like, then how are we going to get the footage that we need so that this thing cuts together? I mean, when I start talking about it, it's like, boy, this is a lot of work.
It is. How long was the shoot for the new film?
Well, I didn't want to rush it. I didn't want to do it full moon. Like, most of those full moon movies were less than a week that they were
Yeah.
shot in, and that's pretty merciless. And since I was going to be shooting it and lighting it, I knew that was going to slow things down to some degree. So what we did is we shot about a week, 7 days over spring break of last year. And I picked spring break because my kids were out of school. My wife took off work, so I was able to it was a very family affair. They were part of my crew. Like my son literally was like my boom operator holding the microphone. I trained him how to do it. Um,
During that steamy scene, was he the boom operator
no,
during that?
no, no, that was the one day.
Okay.
He was not allowed to sit that
That's
day.
their favorite part of the movie. They're like,
Yeah,
wow.
I know exactly. But my wife, she designed most of the sets, was responsible for decorating everything and for feeding the cast and crew, so it really was a family affair in that regard. But then because the weather wasn't so nice, we didn't do much as far as outside stuff. So then in May, we kind of picked up and did another 7 or 8 days. So I think it was like 15 days total,
Wow.
which is enough time to do it right, I think. For that, I mean, again, you're talking about James and I came up with the idea and we made it so that we knew we could shoot it,
Yeah.
essentially. The one question mark is always the makeup effects because you never know what you're going to get into with that. And we did have a lot of drama with the makeup effects, but we wanted to make it so that it was manageable and that we knew we could do it and I think 15 days was the perfect schedule. I mean, would I have loved to shoot more? Sure. If I had,
Yeah.
the resources, I would have done it. But I
Right.
think that was a good schedule for that show.
Talk to me about I wanted to ask you about the makeup effects because they're incredible. First of all, they look great. What kind of problems did you have?
Well, they came with a lot of growing pains because the first guy I hired to do them, who took half of the effects budget, which wasn't much to begin with, but he um, he only worked 2 days in the first week because that's all the only 2 days we had effects. But um, he basically just didn't rise to the occasion, let's say, and it did not work out. I mean, we got some stuff out of him, like there's the shot even in the trailer where James pulls the mask off and his mouth is starting to rot away. There's a couple. I'm not saying that everything he did was bad, but it just wasn't working out. So then I kind of had to turn to a secret weapon. It turns out I had a couple crew members who were already working on the movie that had some degree of makeup effects experience. They were not the thing I found which is weird to me because when I was doing these movies before 23 years ago, everybody wanted to be a makeup effects. Everybody wanted to be Tom Savini. You know what I mean? Everybody knew how
Yeah.
to do that stuff. The so-called makeup effects guys now, a lot of them don't even know how to sculpt or cast a head or make appliances and all that. It's crazy to me that, I mean, I was doing that stuff when I was a kid.
Is it because it's a different world and everything's digital now, maybe?
Probably. I think a lot of it is they just show up and they can spray blood around. And I'm like, well, you don't need a makeup effects artist for that
Yeah.
necessarily. But so anyway, so um there was a gal, Emily Salmons, who was already on the crew doing straight makeup, and she had gone to Tom Savini school and had graduated and everything, but just never really felt the pull to get into that kind of thing. She just wasn't interested in pursuing it after she had went out of school. So she kind of rose to the occasion, and there was another guy, David Milchick, who had done some stuff on the first day of the shoot. The first day we shot the opening of the movie, which is in that lab set, and he had built some, he's the one that had splattered blood around and stuff for that. So those two really kind of like took the bull by the horns and made it work from there, because the second half of the shoot was where the majority of the effects were. That's where, the lead character's walking around and looking all melty and everything else. So
Yeah.
they saved my butt. But even then, I mean, a lot of the stuff, because they were just kind of figuring it out as they went, a lot of stuff didn't work out. We had feet that we had made for James to walk around in, because he's walking around outside, but it had to look like, they weren't, like, he wasn't wearing shoes,
Like Hobbit feet.
Yeah, he's supposed to be bare feet, but
Yeah.
uh so that, that didn't work out the first try. We eventually figured it out and got it. The thing I think that saved us to a large degree is there's this great stuff called blood slime. It's sort of like, that slime that you always see in movies, but it's already colored like blood. And man, you could just put that stuff on just about anything, and if you photograph it right, it really looks fabulous.
Wow.
So they had a happy ending. That's the bottom
Mhm.
line. I wasn't sure, even when we shot everything, if it was how it was going to turn out. It wasn't until I cut everything together, and I the one thing I will always pat myself on the back about is my editing skills. I do think that I can take almost anything and make it look, make it move at least,
Yeah.
in editing. Um so that's what, any shortcomings that we might have had on set, we were able to, I was able to fix when it came time to actually cut it together.
How was it to work with James after all these years, to direct James?
Well, it had been a while. Polymorph, I think, that was the last time, that was 1996, the last time that he had written a script for me, and also starred in it. So it was quite a long time. And we'd done other stuff together, but there was a long period of time where we were not in touch together, and didn't really get back in touch until he made his movie. Her Name is Krista, his first movie.
Mhm. He struck me as a very, he knows what he wants too. He seems like he's very driven, very focused. So I was just wondering how you guys gelled on this project. Even you're creating it together. I mean, screenplay credit to him, um, producer credit to him. You truly collaborated to make this happen.
Oh no, it definitely was. I mean, he's a much more stubborn person than I am in the regards of, like, I want what I want. But I think he knew, he started with me on Dead Next Door. He was like 12 years old, as a
Yeah.
production assistant. So I think he was willing to let me sort of come in, even after, directing two other movies on his own. He was willing to sort of he'd take that feedback and my input on stuff. Well, for one, because I was the one that was, bankrolling the thing in the first place. So he didn't really have a choice. But no, we got together, and once I told him that I was ready to do it, and I kind of threw out an idea of something that I want, what I wanted to do. Um, it was probably the best collaboration I've ever had, honestly, in terms of developing the script, and it was very fast. The one thing he really wanted to rush into writing the script, and I was very much wanted to do a series of treatments, like story, like short story versions of it, a couple page things, just to hammer out all the details. I didn't want to, because I don't like to get into this. Once you get into the script, then it gets kind of complicated, and you start making changes and pulling stuff out. It just
Mhm.
gets kind of screwy. So he was a little like gnashing his teeth, like, oh, I'm gonna, you're making me do too many treatments. I'm like, no, no, no. This is how we're gonna develop this thing. This is how. But once we agreed on it, I mean, the script came. I think he was the January of last year. He's like, oh, I'll have it by the end of January, and he had it like January 9th, something like that. I mean, he wrote it very
Wow.
fast. It was the first draft didn't change. There was a few logistical things, and the bedroom scene, which you've already seen, nobody else has seen yet, but that was the only thing that we kind of didn't see eye to eye on, just because some of the stuff that happens in there, I wanted it to be very specific, and he was looking to go in a different direction. And all I will say is that it turned out exactly the way that I wanted it. So
Okay.
he lost that fight. He likes it. I mean, he's very happy with that scene, even that scene too. So no, it was we went right from that into him switching gears into a lead role in it. And it was funny because I'd be shooting certain things and I'd be thinking, like a take would be rolling and I'd be thinking, oh, I wish he would do that, and then he would just do it. And I think it's partially because we both were on the same page. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Eye to eye on but also the fact that we had done so much work together in the past. It was really just like riding a bike, as they always say. You just get back on the bike, and it just worked out fabulously. Really, I mean, I had no complaints in that regards.
Is he the Bruce Campbell to your Sam Raimi?
Yeah. Well, I mean, he takes a lot of abuse in this movie.
Yeah, he does.
I've shown it to some of mutual friends that we have, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe he let you do that to him." And it's like, well, he wrote it. He never complained, never, not once on the set. But if he would even make a comment that sounded like he might complain, I would always be right there going, "Well, you wrote it. If you didn't want to do it, you shouldn't have written it."
That's right.
But
Get some
no,
more familiar. Sorry, go ahead.
no. I was gonna say it was a beautiful collaboration. I have nothing but praise for that part of it as far as writing and acting. We were just there was no butting of heads. We were simpatico, as they say.
That's great. You got some more familiar faces in the film as well. You got Tina Kraus, you've got Sasha Graham, Brink Stevens.
And
Uh,
it's got a very interesting role
yes, he
that
does. Yeah.
she's done hundreds of movies at this point, but trust me when I tell you, you have not seen her in a role like this before.
Mm-mm.
I think I really chomping at the bit to have people see this, just to see how they react to her performance in this movie. So,
How was she? So have you directed her before?
oh yeah, she was Lilith in Witch House 3, and she's been in but we've done a lot of stuff together. I mean, I think directing wise, well, she did a cameo in Deadly Stingers, the giant scorpion thing as well. So we've had, we've been friends since I think 1990 is when I first met her, so a long time. But no, she's great because Brink comes fully prepared. She knows all of her lines. She doesn't need sides, and she knows exactly. All she wants to know is where am I going to stand, and how do you want me to feed off of the other person? And
Mhm.
she's a pro, man. She just knocks it out. So that makes it very easy in terms of a lot of actors, they might have their hand up here in one take and they're down here in another take, and then you're like, oh crap, how am I going to cut this? The
Right.
continuity is all out of whack. No, she knows exactly what, and if you give her feedback, she's very quick and enthusiastic about rolling that into it too. She doesn't get some actors, you will give them feedback that they weren't planning on, and they're like, oh crap, how do I incorporate this in what I'm doing? But
Mhm.
she's not that at all. She's a
How
doll.
are
She's a doll.
how are you describing this movie to people? Because we want them to go see it. How are you describing it?
Um, Gosh, I guess that's for me. What inspired the movie in the first place is my uh, obsessive childhood love for the Incredible Melting Man. That was really what inspired this thing. And then when I sat down with James at lunch and came up with this, I said I want to do my own version, my own take on that movie. That's what I want to do. I said, but instead of setting it in space, we got to figure something else out because we can't do space. And I didn't want it to be a literal ripoff. We wanted to make it our own thing, which we did, and I think we've actually like this story wise and just there it goes way beyond what even that movie did.
Yeah.
So for me, it was about the all the stuff I grew up watching in the 50s with that whole like atomic hysteria, giant tarantulas and giant this and giant that.
Mhm.
That's what I wanted to do with it. And to me, it was just like, but set it during a pandemic and make it sort of, I like, well, I guess the first thing I should say is I have a general distrust of uh, government and science in general. And I've shown that in my other movies, Dead Next Door in particular, with the protesters against for zombie rights and the serum that the doctor makes and all that kind of stuff. But a lot of that, a lot of the stuff in side effects goes right back to that movie in particular. So, but also I'm have become anti-corporation because the corporations, I feel like they're just squeezing the life out of everything that they get their hands on. And so that was really, I mean, if I had a mission statement, I guess, when I made the movie, this is really, I mean, the thing is, it's a fun movie. I mean, it doesn't get bogged down in any of the stuff I'm talking about. I mean, the one
Right.
thing everybody says when they watch it is like, oh my gosh, it was so much fun. It's
Yeah.
like, that's was the intention. This is a piece of entertainment. This is not, it's not supposed to make any topical. I mean, it's social satire in the Romero style, I guess, if that's where you want to, I always loved the stuff that Romero would put in his movies, where he would be talking about, consumerism, Dawn of the Dead and things like that. I mean, that's as far as it goes. It's
Mhm.
just there's some of that, a lot of that stuff in there, but really, it's a I call it a big goofy melting man, tribute, I guess.
Yeah.
Just
It
tell,
is really, really fun. But it is also a movie for right now.
well, yeah, I mean, I wanted to make it topical. I
Yeah.
don't know, because I am an observer of people, and I saw a lot of craziness during the pandemic, as we all did. We all lived it, and thankfully, most of us survived it. But you see how humans behave in general, and it makes for interesting, like, oh, we could pull from this, we could pull from that. That would be
Mhm.
fun. So to make it sort of, I know a lot of people have seen in recent years. There's been a lot of like pandemic horror movies,
Yeah.
but not like this one. I think this is
No.
a completely unique animal in terms of, if you're fatigued by the pandemic and don't want to hear about it anymore, maybe it's not the movie for you. But it's not about the pandemic. It's just set during the pandemic, is the way I like to describe it, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. It's not about the pandemic, but there is a pandemic in the movie, and it is really fun. I want to encourage, like, it's fun. It's really, really fun. And your anti-corporate stuff is a message that rings really true to me because in the last few years, I'm Gen X. We've always been kind of anti-corporate, but what we're watching right now is the corporations taking over the entire world. And there's a song that plays in the film, and I won't spoil it for anybody, but it is so satirically accurate for where we're at right now, and that people need to go see the movie just for that song for no
That's the
other reason.
end credit song.
Yep.
That's my boy Andy Preboy from the second generation of Wall of Voodoo. He was the lead singer, and that song's actually not new. That's an older song that he did some years back. It's
Can we
called
tell people, like, no, we wanted to go see the movie.
No,
We
no, no.
wanted to.
Go download it
All
on
right.
iTunes or whatever. It's called All Hail the Corporation, and that to me was, I started going through and like figuring out how do I want to end this movie, on what kind of note. And I love the ending for it, but that song is sort of like this the capper on it's like the icing on the cake, I guess.
There's that, and then there's your post-credit sequence, the very end of the thing, which is just like, well, it's just this little
I mean,
cherry.
you get a little taste of that in the trailer, but you don't get the
Right.
full. Yeah, that
Yeah.
was a lot of fun to do, actually.
Yeah. Hey, that's how you can do commercials too. There's your commercial aspirations coming through. People are
That's
like, "What's he talking about?" There's like a commercial of
Well, I put that stuff in there too, I think, also because a lot of people tend to just turn movies off when the credits roll.
yeah.
And I was like, no, I want them to watch you have to watch all the way to the end, even in the theater. Don't get up, don't leave. You got to sit all the way. Of course, they're going to sit all the way, and I hope to see us talk about the movie after, at least in the road show. But even when you watch it on streaming or whatever, you gotta make it all the way through.
Okay, so
Unless
let's talk about the road show.
unless you just don't like it, and then you can just turn it off and not
No,
worry.
no, you got to stay. You got to watch all the way to the very, very end because it's worth it. Talk about the road show. You're going out with this movie. You're taking it around.
Yeah, well, it's kind of snowballed into something a little bigger than what maybe I had first intended. Because we were just thinking, man, if we could get a dozen theaters to show this thing, that would be great. And I think we're already up to 21 or 22,
Wow.
and there's more, in the works as well. So the first week we're going to do every night. It's Pittsburgh, Harrisburg, Callicoon, which is oh no, I'm sorry, Philadelphia, then Callicoon, which is in the Catskills, New York, and then Worcester, Massachusetts, and Baltimore, Maryland. So that's like the first 6 days. And then we're going to be all through Ohio in February. And then I'm going out west in March. We'll do New Orleans and Dallas and Austin. And we've got Minneapolis and Kansas City and Wichita, and there's a lot more to come still. I mean, we're trying to get it. We put out a thing on social media. It was like, where do you want to see this? They don't, most people hadn't seen anything except the first teaser trailer, but we were like, tell us your favorite theaters, tell us where you like to watch independent movies. And that was very helpful because then we were able to sort of target, and I think we've got most of those venues. Um, and that's the thing. I mean, most of these, I'm not doing this old, used to do a four-wall theatrical thing where you would pay the theater and then you had to work on getting the people in there. We're partnering with these theaters. They are equal partners in this whole process, and they're also working their audiences to get people to come and see this. So it truly is a grassroots road show. We're not going through some theatrical distributor where this is all stuff that I kind of said, wouldn't it be cool to get it in some theaters? And then we just kind of willed it into existence and made it happen.
That's incredible. That's that spirit that I'm talking about. That you're these are the things that set you aside from some of the other people that do make similar kinds of movies. You have this very entrepreneurial, you're always thinking ahead, and I love that. Where can people go to find out if you're going to be coming to there? Like they get the dates and everything. Is there a place you want them to go check it out?
We've kind of barfed it all over social media at this point, but I mean, the side effects may vary. Side effects may vary. Movie has an Instagram page and a Facebook page, and that stuff is all linked on there. We have a bunch of Facebook events set up for some of the early screenings, and there's more of that's coming. And we'll keep, as we add dates, we'll keep posting about it as well. This will probably go. I mean, as of right now, it's going to go at least through June because we were selected for the Weekend of Fear festival in Germany. So that's going to be the first international screening towards the end of June. And I'm actually going to go to that because that's been on my bucket list for many years to go to Germany, which is kind of exciting because I'm also The Dead Next Door is being re-released in Germany this year, and it's actually the first time that it has been released where it has not been banned. They actually, the company that is putting it out got it unbanned. It's been banned for decades, and all the releases have been like bootleg releases that have gone to like Denmark and Holland and different places, and to get it into Germany. So that one's actually making its Blu-ray debut in Germany this year as well, which is kind of cool.
You should document that. You should document your trip to Germany.
Well, I
Make a
probably
little
will.
film.
I'm sure that I will. I mean, one of my colleagues on the movie was like, somebody should be recording this road show because this is going to be
Yeah.
nuts. Because it's
That's
literally
a
James and I are getting that first week, especially. I mean, we're getting in a rental car and we're just driving to all these places, and we're taking, we got a bunch of cool merch, and we're taking some of the, the Blu-rays and stuff and the DVDs for the movies that we made. So we'll be there, and we'll sign stuff, and if people want to bring their old VHS copies or whatever they got, we'll be happy to sign it for them. And, it's kind of like a convention on wheels. That's what it's like. I've done conventions plenty of times in the past, but this is a more specific animal. I really want people to come out and see it in the theater, see it on the big screen, because, don't wait for it to be on Tubi where you watch it on your phone.
and you say no physical media? There's not going to be physical media for this?
Well, there's one exception to that. On the road show, I'm actually going to have, and I'll try and hold it up. I think it would probably be too blurry, but one of my colleagues made this very cool, this collector's edition VHS, which we haven't even announced. This is
Nice.
a Serial at Midnight exclusive.
Hey.
But yeah, this is a slick piece of something here. But that's the only way. If you want to own it, you're going to have to buy it on VHS for right now, because it won't be probably the disc release maybe for Black Friday this year, if we'll see. But
Okay.
streaming will be even further, because I'm withholding. Sorry, everyone that's waiting for streaming, you're gonna have to wait. But I will say, when the disc comes out, because I shot and finished this movie 4K HDR, this will be my first 4K Blu-ray. I can tell you that. So
Nice. I think the way I watched it, I think it was in 4K, and it
yeah,
looked
yeah, the screen.
really, really good.
And that's the thing too, that a lot of horror movies now are very like dour and dark and just sort of like flat looking and just
Yeah.
not interesting. I mean, they're lit well, they're made well, but they just sort of like don't do anything for me. You know, it's just very like "Ugh," the look of it. And so I wanted the opposite of that. I wanted something that was like almost obnoxious in how bold and bright and colorful it was.
Hmm.
And boy, I got it. That
Yeah.
was the intention, and it definitely is that. I mean, I like to call it, because between that and the music score and the 5.1 surround mix, it's very a bombastic movie. It's just sort of like it's not so much in your face. It's not obnoxious. It's not in a bad way, but it's just you're not used to seeing stuff like this now because, you know, most of the movies don't look like this. This looks like, I mean, in many ways, it is a throwback to, you know, an older type of movie.
I think that's a good place to leave it. I think that's our out right there. We want people to go check out Makeflix. Where else do you want people to go? You follow me on social media. You want to shout out anything?
Yeah, I'm easy to find on social media. I'm just JR Bookwalter pretty much everywhere.
Yeah.
Makeflix is on Twitter. Facebook is just Makeflix. We recently had our Instagram account get deactivated, so that's we're now back with Makeflix Movies instead of Makeflix Store from that for that one avenue. And then the Side Effects May Vary movie is the Facebook and Instagram and Threads business if you want to follow the
I'm,
flick.
I'm going to hawk your book too, because if people have been intrigued by what you've been talking about here, you have walked us through the craft of B movie filmmaking through your book. And I want to shout this out because
It's more like chronicling all of my mistakes. So that's the way I like. But I mean, that's the stuff that people want, right? You know.
it's through mistakes that we learn and become better than we were. So
Yeah. One of these days I'll get around to writing the follow-up to that because that covers the first 10 movies, but it
yeah.
leaves a lot of stories out that I
But there's a
have.
lot of lessons there for people that are interested in making movies and don't know how to do it or don't know necessarily how to go about it. There's a lot to learn from that.
Well, it's funny too because I've had some people, some guys that are sort of younger generation filmmakers read that and that are like their hair turns white because they're horrified of all the stuff that you used to have to do this and this. And seriously, I'm like, yeah, that's the way we used to do it. You know, you guys don't know with your nonlinear editing and your iMovie and all this, you know, Final Cut Pro, all this stuff that we, you know, it was a bear to make this stuff back in the day.
Yeah. But the new movie looks great. The new movie is a ton of fun, and we want to encourage people to get out and see it.
Yeah, everybody watching this should go see it.
JR, thank you. Thank you for coming back to Serial at Midnight.
My pleasure. Thank you.
I just love J.R. Bookwalter. I love the attention and the detail that he brings to his movies. His use of color, his use of light, his use of angles. This man is a filmmaker. Are filmmakers born? Are they created? I think J.R. Bookwalter is evidence that some people are just born with the DNA to make movies. He has all of these gifts, and they all they're all in this new film. It's such a labor of well, you heard, you know, I mean, shooting it, editing it, scoring it, doing so much stuff, hands on. It's this DIY spirit that really resonates with me because I have it too, obviously. So do go out. Remember to hit up all the socials for Side Effects May Vary to find out where you can catch this movie. Hopefully they're coming to a theater in your neighborhood. Also, here's how you can help Serial at Midnight. However, if you're getting this on podcast, if you're getting this on YouTube, you want to review it, you want to rate it, you want to subscribe, you want to do thumbs ups when you can, you want to leave a comment, you want to share it with as many people as you can. That's how you can support the Serial at Midnight podcast. Go tell all your friends about me. That's how you can do it. I want to thank you for hanging out with me, checking out this episode. I do appreciate you guys, and we'll have another conversation very similar to this coming very soon. So thank you guys. I appreciate it. Take care. Until next time, I will catch you later.